Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now, this next one, I have to point out, it is a crossover event. So, given how crossover characters tend to work when it comes to the gacha, now is probably one of the best times to empty out any jewels or tickets that you may have saved up, because crossover characters are the hardest to get extra shots at, because first off, it is not guaranteed if they'll come back. And second, even if they do come back, it's a very long time in between them. So, if you're going to try and get any gacha characters, you might want to do that here. Especially since the dark one for this isn't too bad, the dark SSR character. So, she actually has a bit of uses if done correctly. And the fact that she's limited is still the biggest thing. Even if the character isn't all that good, I would still try to get a limited character. You never know when you might need them. In fact, we currently have a tower event right now. That's a good time to be using any characters you have. But this event, it doesn't last as long as crossovers used to, because it used to be a month long, but it's still plenty of time to get everything, so it's about 2 weeks long. But it's an avid event, so you're on your own. And this is the first time they've given Ragnarok Plus on a crossover event, so I'm not exactly sure how difficult it'll be. Because before, crossover events used to be easier than the normal ones, but I'm not exactly sure until I actually play this one. Also, there are some interesting stuff to go for regardless of who you are, so that's something to know. Starting off, the 1/10 SSR tickets are here. Grind those out. Again, I say this in every single event video. Try to get these. There are guaranteed SSR tickets that you can basically just grind out. It takes a long time, but everybody gets a shot at a SSR guaranteed. So that's something to really try to work towards. Second, there are those green cores. And currently right now, they're a little bit difficult to try and get. Because it's sporadic when we can get these. If you're trying to unlock some of the better stuff in the game, you're going to need these cores. So you will need to grind these out. And of course, there's a free pool stuff like gacha tickets and magic jewels. Always try to grind those out as well. I'm not exactly sure how the weapon is just yet. We'll see that later. And as far as it goes with a lot of this other stuff, like the soul points or basically any like grimoires, they're more of a case of get them if you need them. I would still get the grimoires because those books actually are used up quite a bit for a lot of different things. I'm always on a low supply because if you're trying to beef up all your Kamihime as strong as possible, you will go through a lot of those books. So, especially if you're like me, I currently have over 400 Kamihime now. But those books, you do need more than you would think. Thankfully, they've changed how the accessory stuff is now, so you won't use those books as quickly. But you still use them for a lot of other stuff, like 4th tier souls, getting Kamihime, or even certain weapons stronger. It's a lot of different stuff that you need those books for. Now, again, this does indeed have a Ragnarok Plus, so if you've been able to clear them before, you shouldn't have too much problem now. It's just that it's all light-based enemies, so your dark team's going to have the best chance at this. There's also storyline, as you can see right here. A lot of stuff you have to clear, but it's a good handful of magic jewels. It's usually more than just a normal event, so there you go. As for the storyline fights, they're pathetically easy. Like, these enemies don't even have 6-digit HP, so you can easily take them out. Like, even a person who just started the game should be able to fight these guys and win. As for the different fights themselves, they do give recommended combat power right here. My suggestion, go into Weekly Advent and see if you can clear the stages there. If you can do that there, you should be able to do that here. So that's something to know. But in the case of Ragnarok Plus, there isn't really a testing ground for that. But it isn't as difficult as you would think. Generally, if you can solo Ultimate Rage, you've got a very good shot at Ragnarok Plus. So that's something to know. But the thing is, you're limited on Ragnarok Plus runs per day, and they happen to have the best drop rates for stuff. So if you are able to clear them, make sure you do that. If you can't clear them, don't worry about it. You still have Ragnarok to grind out. Now, as for enemies themselves, there's like no special characters really fighting in these grindable stages by the looks of it. But they do like messing with your burst quite a bit, so pay attention to that. When it comes to normal mode, it is burst seal that they can put on people, but they can increase your burst gauge based on the first action they take, along with raging bar. So it's kind of weird, but it does indeed play into their into one of their triggers, which is it will give itself a counterattack preparation anytime somebody bursts. So don't use a burst to sorry, hard to pronounce. Don't use a burst too much until you know you're going to win the fight. As for the counterattack, it will just nuke everybody, but then cancel its counter state. Generally, this is going to be where the most damage happens because it's the only AoE skill that it really has, aside from the first action it takes. It does make up for all of this, however, because it has one orb before it goes into its normal or raging mode nuke, so you do want to pay attention to that. If you can, try and increase it. And it's generally the same for all the fights, basically. The only difference is really the HP. So that's something you really need to pay attention to. The HP on Ultimate is 1.2 million. On Ragnarok it's 2.6 million, and Ragnarok Plus it's 10 million. And this is why I said Ragnarok Plus is a good place to grind if you can solo the Ultimate Catastrophe Rage, because generally the entire fight has about the same HP. So that's something to really know. Also, going a little bit further in the Ragnarok Plus fight, the first enemy, it will damage you. It doesn't really say what debuff it gives right here or anything. It says for 4 turns. I'm guessing it gives illusion to itself. And if I remember correctly, that's the one that ups your evasion. Now for the second enemy, it will have one orb as well, so be careful of that. And every normal attack is stacking its own attack power, so it's going to essentially attack power boost, nuke you, attack power boost, nuke you, pretty much like that. It does have the least amount of HP out of all the enemies though, so that's something to really look forward to. Now, the third enemy you fight in Ragnarok Plus, that's an enemy that will reduce your burst gauge, so be careful of that one. Thankfully it's only to one person again, but still something to be wary about. And on top of that, it will start spamming attack down on its normal attacks. So be very careful of that as well. You don't want your attack power reduced for the next fight, but thankfully it's 3 turns, so it is kind of short, but I would still try to remove that if possible. And it's also got 2 orbs as well, so it will burst fairly often, just not as much as the boss or the second enemy. Now then, the weapons themselves. These could have some use, but you will end up replacing them later on. Now, this translates to give yourself a chase. I'm pretty sure it's pursuit, but I'm going to check just to make sure. Unfortunately, there isn't too much on it. But give yourself a chase usually means pursuit, so that's something to know. But the main thing is that putting it in your weapon slots, period, is going to give large assault, small defender. White seems to have a lot of access towards this, but if you're just starting off, that's an easy weapon to really get for that. At least until you can get some better ones like the hammers from the ultimate catastrophe raids. As for the gun, it gives you vigor and it gives you vigor and ascension. Plus, I don't know if this is a team's HP if it recovers when you burst, but it may have some uses as well, because vigor is another multiplier, and ascension, it really helps towards vigor because it will give you more recovery on your heals. So this may have some use at the start. However, it's also replaced by an even better weapon later on, which happens to be the staff from the Haggith Guardian raid. That will give you vigor, defender, and ascension. And eventually it'll be able to final limit break. So these two weapons, they're okay at the start, but they get outclassed later on, so they're really just temporary. I wouldn't worry about the SR weapons at all, because we've long hit a point where SR weapons are easily just not even worth trying to go after. The SR weapons are, for the most part, single skill, and the few that have double skill are still outclassed by stuff we can basically grind out now, so there's no point in keeping the SR weapons. They're just fodder. So if you happen to get those, just use them as fodder. As for these event missions, you have to use these weapons and clear an advent at least once. So that's something that's kinda interesting, but it's not really too much you can really worry about. But the thing it gives is this, and this isn't too great really. I mean, it does have Rainbow Assault, basically. Well, it's called Prism, but it comes with Rush. And that's a downside with a weapon like this, because Rush generally isn't looked at as a good skill. Even if you have a normal attack build, it's not looked at as a good skill. So it's another one of those weapons that work on all elements, but this is one that you can actually fodder, because previous ones have been better at it. You'll either have the Shark Gun from a Grisaia crossover, and that weapon would have given small assault plus small defender regardless of element. And then there's also the panel sword, which is medium assault regardless of element. Those would have more use than this weapon right here, so this one is not all that great. It would give you a little push towards all elements, but again, there's something else that does it better, especially since Rush, you want triple attack more than double attack. So Barrage is easily better than Rush, especially if you can get a lot of Barrage off of one weapon. But Rush is generally just not all that great. But these missions are basically to get copies of that weapon. If you really want to, you can keep all 4 copies separate and just raise them all up that way. I've done it with the Shark Guns and ended up using Adolan Orbs in order to break limit each one. However, it's not really recommended because, again, the weapon's not all that great itself. And then there's better ones that's already been established, so. But if you are trying to get these weapons, and you're going to have to clear all the storyline scenarios, you're going to have to organize a free SR you get from the login bonus. You're going to have to organize each SSR weapon from this event and try to clear it that way as well. And that will get you all 4 copies of that weapon. But to the best of my knowledge, this is the 3rd weapon that does indeed work regardless of element. The skills should have been better, if you ask me, but again, it's a slight push towards working towards all elements, so newer players would at least get some use out of it. And that's the main gimmick with all of this stuff anyway. It's some use out of all of this stuff. So that's something to know. Now, as for the characters, I'm going to have to go through their pages and search them out, because they don't have a direct link to each of them right here. So bear with me for a moment. But we're going to start off with the gacha one that you can pull, and I'll also break down why she's pretty good. In fact, you have to scroll down pretty far, because we've gotten very, very far into a lot of characters. Actually, I just saw her. So this is Momio Kawakami. Anybody that knows about the series already knows about her. Now, here's where she's interesting. She will have a 4-turn nuke that she can do, where she'll hit an enemy 4 times, and it gets stronger the more she uses it. On top of that, she can give herself a massive vigor increase, but it doesn't really say how much down below, so my guess is that it's at least 50%. Since most AoE buffers give you at least 33. But it's at least a 50% vigor increase, and it disables any attacks that she takes. Now, disable is not necessarily a damage cut, you just avoid damage altogether. So for 1 turn, she's just avoiding damage. On top of that, she has an ability that has 6 turns cooldown, but when she uses it, she fully heals herself. She's got a lot of sustain. It does say it can only be used up to 30 times, but quite frankly, if a fight gets that long, you probably shouldn't be doing that fight anyways. And then there's also the assist ability, where if her HP is absolutely full, she's guaranteed triple attack. So the more she goes at full HP, the longer her guaranteed triple will be. This has got a lot of uses for both normal attacks and bursts. Speaking of bursts, when she does her burst, that vigor buff will be able to it will come off a cooldown. You're able to use it again. So done correctly, she can essentially just burst roughly every 4 turns. That would give her essentially half uptime on the vigor buff and 1/4 uptime on just preventing damage she takes. Again, she can be quite strong when used properly. Me personally, though, I don't think she's a must-have character, but if you do get her, she's definitely worth it. Especially considering the fact that she might even have some use later on for one of the skill competitions, the guild competitions where you fight Skill Cone. She could have some use for some of those as well, especially a specific one I'm thinking of where ability damage is coming into play, and she'll be able to use her ability a few times. So, that said, if you happen to get her, she's definitely not a waste. You may or may not use her depending on your formations, though, because there still will be other characters that can service better. Generally, you'll want AoE-focused characters more than single target, because there's AoE vigor and all sorts of other stuff you can get your hands on. But she definitely has her uses, so again, enjoy her if you get her. But what does give her a lot of priority is the fact that she is indeed a limited character, so you will not, and I repeat, will not be able to pull her for a very long time, if at all. The fact that she is a crossover character means that she really should be a high priority target for pulling if you're going to go after anybody that's limited. Now then, for the next character, I have to scroll down quite a bit too. And there's been a lot of SR characters in the game as well. In fact, there's probably more SR characters than SSR in the game right now, if I'm to be honest. In fact, I'm still not there just yet. Bear with me for a second, it's hard to see sometimes. But there is two, I don't know if you can trade for these two, the first two, but this is the one you will definitely get from the login bonuses. Now, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but the interesting thing for her, especially considering that she's an SR character, when she bursts, it does extra damage. And knowing the wiki, it usually doesn't have that, the amount of damage. But the fact that she does extra damage upon bursts, and even more so her assist ability, where she does extra damage when doing combo attacks, meaning any double or triple, she can rack up a little bit more damage than you think. On top of that, she's also able to increase her normal attack damage and her evasion rate. And even more so, she can force herself to do normal attacks with her third skill. With her first skill, she is guaranteed to do combo attacks for 2 turns. So, even though she's SR, she's actually pretty good, and she's a free character, so another case of enjoy her, but you pretty much are guaranteed to get her unless you just don't log in. This character actually should have some use in a few towers later on, and potentially even some skill competitions too, if you don't have too much better. So she also has her uses as well. But the main thing with her is that she really gives out a lot of additional damage with her stuff, so that's something to really help out, because additional damage is technically a way to bypass soft caps. Like, for instance, if you somehow get her to do 2 million bursts, like 2 million damage bursts, which is typically the highest soft cap we have right now, the additional damage will ignore that and just do extra damage outside of that burst. So, if that makes sense, then that's how it works. It's the same thing with normal attacks as well. So, I would honestly say she's pretty good. If anything, if she was SSR, she would be really worth it. In fact, depending on the additional damage she's doing, she might actually be an SSR in disguise. I would go so far as to say that. There's very few SR in the game that are actually worthy of being an SSR. Now, as for the others you might pull, I am not exactly sure about this character. However, she does have the stronger DOT. And then she also has an ability called Detect. So, that's going to come into play with her assist ability. But when it comes to her burst, she puts a charge on herself. And then she can activate her third ability twice if she uses a 5 charges. Now, if you have Detect on an enemy, she also gains additional charges that way as well. But it's going to guarantee that she pulls off a stinger hit on an enemy that has a weakness detected. So basically against water enemies, since she's thunder. The big thing though is the fact that she removes the debuff resistance. She reduces the debuff resistance of an enemy, along with giving them the stronger version of Blind, the stronger version of Poison, the stronger version of Drown, and the stronger version of Burn. and these are very high damage over time. Each one is dealing 20,000 damage. And even says right here, right, it will give up to 180,000 damage, which actually is kind of sizable for damage over time. There's better ones in the game for sure, but this is still very strong. And for an SR character to have access to it, is no. So that's something to know. And even more so is the fact that if you have that guaranteed stinger, it will help you out when she bursts as well, because it is another multiplier. So that said, she's also got her uses as well. And there will be a if I remember correctly, there will be a water tower pretty soon, so you might actually use her in that. You have to pull her though, so that's the downside with this one. And then the other one I think you have to pull as well. Now she's water based, and she recovers her HP along with removing debuffs off herself. If she bursts, she can use it again. It'll just take it off its cooldown. Then on top of that too, when there's an enemy that's in a Cobra Twist state, which is done with her first skill, it increases the chances that she gets targeted, but also reduces the damage she takes from them. This goes in hand with her second skill, which is a Reflect, and it also draws attention to herself. Reflect is different than anything that does sort of like a counterattack. Now, in the case of Reflect, it doesn't say how much it is right here, but from what I remember previously, Reflect reduces the damage you take by a certain percentage. It's like a damage cut, along with sending some of that damage back to an enemy. She is more or less a counterattacker, and in some cases it could be useful, but generally you would want your counterattackers to be able to survive very well, and generally she can do that, but she's kind of relying on her skills to pull it off. Generally, you're going to want all three skills available for all of that. She can have some uses too, but she's probably the worst of them all, if you ask me. But if you happen to pull her, still enjoy her, because again, limited Kamihime, so there's that as well. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this event's going to come soon, because I'll have a video up for it as well. But something I need to point out, since I'm also looking at this list as well, we are really in the middle of a huge limited Hime rush. So definitely pick and choose when you're going to pull on stuff, because even for a whale, it will be very difficult to do that. Generally, I would say use this event to empty out anything you stocked up, because again, crossover event. They won't come back for a long while, if they even do come back. And there is no confirmed rerun on this event as of right now. So, my suggestion, if there's any good time to pull, it's now. But anyways, that's all for this. More will come soon, and take care.